What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Facade. I am your host, Gavin J. Gallagher, and on this podcast, I explore the mental and emotional game often playing out subconsciously in your mind and the mind of everyone else in the real estate or property investment market. The key to success in this game is to master your mindset, your behavior, to take control of your thoughts, your emotions, and most importantly, your ego. So here we are on episode 63. Last week I was talking about confidence and the mindset, and I thought it was a good opportunity to plug my upcoming mastermind, details of which you guys will have received by email at this stage. And if you haven't received an email, then please reach out and connect with me over social media if you are interested in participating in that mastermind. It's going out to everybody who is on my email list. And so if you haven't already added your name to the email list, you can find that at gavinjgallagher.com/go. All right, so this week my guest is Mr. Andrew McDonald. Now, Andrew is a London-based commercial property agent, and he has been in this sector for over 25 years, so tons of experience and knowledge to kind of pass on to us today. The discussion is going to go into a lot of, the various things that Andrew's seeing in the market, but he's also going to give some of his views on the direction that he believes the market is going to go, and some of the opportunities that he is actually looking at himself nowadays, because he's recently set up a new venture called Credo Living. And this is a venture between his agency business and an architectural firm called Windsor Pattinier. And they are looking at conversion of redundant commercial into residential, which we've spoken about with a couple of different people over the last while. So this is just a good example of some of the partnerships that are taking off at the moment, with people sort of looking at partnering up or joint venturing with somebody who can kind of complement your skill set. So if you've got an area that you're not particularly good at, it's always a good idea to go out and find somebody who can plug that gap. And finally, after the discussion on all that stuff, I'm going to get into my favorite topic with Andrew, and that is, of course, mindset and mental strength. And we have a good old chat about Andrew's newfound interest in motorbikes and NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. And in particular, we talk about his experience doing an ultra marathon across the Sahara Desert. So it's going to be a good episode today, guys. I hope you're going to enjoy my conversation with Mr. Andrew McDonald. Welcome, Andrew McDonald. How are you doing today, Andrew?
Yes, I'm good. I'm good, Gavin, and thanks for having me on here. It's great to be talking to you.
It's great to be talking to you too, Andrew. Today we've got an interesting conversation. We're going to talk about agency. We're going to talk about commercial property, and we're also going to talk about interests outside of property, because that's something that you and I have been tagging back and forth on social media. But just before we get into that, just for the people who don't know anything about you, how would you describe yourself?
Well, it's a good question, I suppose, isn't it? Just purely in a property context, I've been a commercial property agent for 25 years, and that is dealing solely 95% in the retail and associated sectors like leisure. I've split my time between being a letting agent, and more latterly, the last 10 or so years, or 15 years, I've been a commercial investment broker. So buying and selling high street properties, or primarily high street properties, for a range of clients, mainly institutional and large property companies and high net worth individuals. So that's a potted summary. I've recently set up a development platform as well, which is keeping me interested. That'll be phase 2 or 3 of my career, which I'm just starting out on.
Well, we're going to get into all that today. Just from the point of view of a little bit of context, can you give us a bit of your backstory? I mean, how did you find yourself in the property industry?
Like most, or like many people at the age of 18, faced with the prospect of going to university, but really not having a clue what you wanted to do with your life. I'm quite envious of those that did at the time, had a vision, but all I knew that I was expected to go to university. I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. So I did the easiest thing that was available to me, and that was follow my dad's footsteps. He was a surveyor and a property developer, so I did a surveying course in University of West of England, as it was, and then 3 years of that, a year out afterwards, and then suddenly I was on a desk in the West End in a suit and tie, not knowing quite how I got there.
It's funny, a lot of people, that's exactly the same kind of story, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And so you wouldn't describe yourself as being kind of passionate about property before you got interested or anything like that. It was just a means to an end kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, my dad really enjoyed it, and I think property surveying over the last 30 or 40 years has gone through a bit of a change. From when he was a young surveyor and such like, it was a different industry to what it is now. But I remember when I was growing up that he had a good time. He had a good work-life balance. He did okay out of it. And he seemed to have freedom when he wanted to, and had to work hard when it was required. So, to me, it looked pretty good. I had no real firm interest in buildings or such like, but as a career, it sort of seemed to tick many of the boxes.
Ticks the box, yeah. And I mean, obviously, you've gone into co-founding your own firm and things like that. But what came before that? You worked in a sort of a mainstream kind of firm for a couple of years.
Yeah, so I had a really typical route in. So I got recruited into a company called Churston Hurd in the mid 1990s. They're a retail consultancy, and who eventually got bought out by Jones Lang. I spent a few years there. Then I went to Stratton Parker, had 6 years there in the West End. Then I went to a company called Nelson Bakewell. I had 10 years there.
Wow.
And then a company called CWM, a retail consultancy, and I had 6 years there. But it was really all very typical stuff that office in the West End. I got there through applying from their sort of graduate programs, and it's a sort of a fairly familiar career path, really. It's a 9 to 5 job. Various levels of corporate activity in the companies. I've been in niche companies and big companies, but really it's quite a standard way through for a lot of surveyors just to get into the big consultancies and march their way through over the years. So, some spin out to do their own stuff, and then some stay there till they retire.
And I mean, I know I was very much involved in the retail kind of sector as a developer back in the kind of early 2000s. And it was a very, very lucrative business to be in. Obviously, it's gone through quite a change in the last 18 months or so. I mean, from your perspective, do you see the market returning, or do you think that it's kind of gone through this kind of once in a lifetime kind of disruption that's going to completely change the direction that it's going to go?
This is the retail market. I've seen the issues coming down the track for a good few years, and my concern was it was going to be a death by 1,000 cuts, a really sort of long, slow, drawn out process of people removing themselves from the retail market, but done gradually and painfully, and leading to a long period of inertia. I think what COVID did, if one takes the positives about it, it accelerated that entire process. So there's been a really big shake-up in the retail sector amongst the consultancies, the developers. We've seen big companies go bust. Into and or to name one. So I think there's just been a massive shaken up, and I think that provides the platform and a sort of a clear mandate for people with vision to come in now and make their mark. So with great disruption, which is what we've seen over the last 18 months, there's a marketplace is created. So I think there is deals to be done and business to be done going forward. Right now we're still limping out of COVID, so it's very tough. But
yeah,
as I say, with disruption comes opportunity, and for those with vision and forethought, I think could do quite well out of what's coming ahead.
Yeah, I've been looking at it just as a kind of consumer. There's a village near where I live, and it's it's got a couple of how I would kind of describe as artisan cafes where they bake their own, scones, and they make sandwiches and all that. And there would be queues out the door for these places. And
Yeah.
then across the street there'll be a Starbucks and a Costa, and there's like nobody going near these places.
Yeah.
And so it seems like on the same street where there's clearly a demand for coffee and scones and all that, that just people are kind of pushing away from the big brands and very much heading towards the kind of almost like a craft side to things. Is that how you're seeing it over in the UK as well?
Yeah, there's definitely space for and the opportunity now for the artisans and the artisan bakers and the one man bands to come out and actually take space. I think there's always been appetite for it, but where they've struggled is actually to pay the rents which the likes of Starbucks and Costas have been able to do. And also they don't have covenants. So
That's the covenant is the biggest thing, isn't it? Yeah, from that landlord point of view, you'd prefer to have a Starbucks there.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're popular, at least from a banking point of view, they're pretty stable.
Yeah, there's been no consumer choice, is there? It's been Starbucks, Cafe Nero, Costa Coffee. Yeah, this is just in the coffee sector. So they've been busy, but you bring in independent retailers, who've got a good manager and a good owner who pour their heart and soul into it. That's where people want to spend their time, isn't it? Not in some sort of faceless brand.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah. So that is one of the good things which is going to come out of this. The one man bands, the local operators will have that ability to open stores again.
Yeah, no, I think it's not all bad, all right, for sure. I mean, from the point of view of residential market, obviously it's like it's tearing away. Do you have any ideas on the future of residential? I mean, I've been thinking about it from the point of view of, it's at the moment it's on a tear and it's doing incredibly well. But behind that, there's obviously, 18 months of disruption that caused a supply chain delays and all that kind of stuff. And so the demand that's there at the moment isn't necessarily real demand, realistic kind of demand that you would expect the market to have. And then on top of that, you've got the fact that people have saved up all of this money and stuff like that. And this kind of, it's going to be unleashed. But you've also got the government support schemes and the stimulus and things like that. Do you think there's a risk of the residential market kind of dropping off a bit at some point in the future rather than tearing on as it's been going?
Yeah, for sure. You've only got to sort of read two sides of a newspaper at any given weekend, and you'll see that house prices are at a record high, and we've had record growth. And you could turn over the following page, and you'll read about this is a 300-year recession that we're in.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's strange, isn't it? It's counter. It's kind of going against all of the wisdom. I mean, 18 months ago, I was saying we're going to be in for a recession, and then I've been sitting there eating my shoe as I watch the market tear away, and I'm like, what the hell is going on with this market? But I don't think it can last forever. And I'm just curious, just do you have an insight on where do you think the market could go?
I've no real insight apart from just my sort of feeling as a property professional, and the economics don't back up the current circumstance as far as I can see. So I would be sort of cautious about my approach to. Well, I am cautious about my approach to residential. If you're going to buy well, buy cheap. But what there is a sort of a shake up in the way we live, isn't there? There's
the work from home and all that. Yeah.
Work from home, yeah. So whether that means there's going to be continued activity because people want to move out of the cities and into the countryside, that's going to carry on driving the market for a while. So we might get two-tier markets. We might get the city centres suffering for a bit if there is a sort of a big migration from flat living and apartment living into the suburbs. We might get continued house growth in the nice commuter towns.
Yeah,
to be seen, but just really a bit of caution is required, I think.
It's a difficult one, all right, because I kind of feel like that cities will bounce back. Big organizations, they thrive on the collective energy that comes from a big office and lots of people sort of turning up and stuff. And this forced kind of change of our way and stuff like that has been nice, and I've enjoyed the balance that it's given me and stuff like that. But you have to kind of wonder, like, when it comes to ambitious young people, thriving, wanting to kind of get ahead and stuff. And what does it take to get ahead? Well, you want to be seen by your manager. You want to be the boss to kind of notice how many hours you work compared to the other people and stuff. A lot of that just is kind of being missed at the moment. And so I kind of think that there'll be this migration back to the city by those kind of people. And there'll be a splitting of, salaries and stuff like that. If you want to live down the country, well, then you're going to have to take a commensurate pay cut, It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Obviously, I've been looking at your career, and you went from working in the big firms to starting co-founding your own two firms. You've got Credo Living and you've got Tandem Real Estate. Tell us about those.
Tandem Real Estate is a continuation of, or pretty much continuation of what I've done for the last 25 years. I took the decision a couple of years ago that I wanted to sort of run my own agency, and I was working in a primarily, a pure retail agency consultancy, and it was just getting harder and harder to buy sizable, profitable property investments for my historic client base, and it was difficult to position ourselves as multi-sector agents at my last retail consultancy. So at Tandem Real Estate, we've got the ability to to do deals across all sectors, industrial, offices, retail, leisure sectors and such like. So we've got that platform to do that, and there's just me and another guy, Andy Taylor. There's two of us doing that. We've got going at the beginning of this year. It's obviously a tough market.
It's been a tough market, yeah.
To birth into, but I've seen two or three markets, not quite as bad as this, but three similar markets. So, we'll come out of it. In the meantime, I've set up Credo Living, which is our commercial conversion platform, and that's a joint venture between Tandem Real Estate and a firm of architects, Windsor Patternere. And we are out looking for redundant town centre space, for converting into residential and perhaps other uses as well.
Okay, I see. Yeah. So this is kind of like high street stuff that's no longer in use, or anywhere?
Yeah, it is high street, although I'm mindful about what I said a few minutes ago in terms of the city centres not being a sort of place where people want to live. So whilst I agree with you, I think the youth will come back into our city centres over a period of time. I think we've got to recognise that it might be slightly difficult to really capitalise on that sort of small apartment living in the town centres for a little while. So the good thing about being small and niche is that hopefully we can be fleet of foot. We'll look at other deals along the way as well, which is what we're doing. But yeah, I've seen the town centres, in the retail market suffer over recent years. It's fallen in our favour that the general permitted development order is changing to allow greater flexibility from commercial to residential. So that bodes well.
Yeah, that's been helpful. All right, and tell us, setting up your firm, what kind of challenges did you face? Obviously COVID being the number one, but in terms of Credo and stuff like that, I presume investment capital, you've got all of your old connections and your old clients and stuff like that you can go and speak to about investing and things like that.
Yeah, no, we do. We've got good contacts amongst sophisticated investors and the general property fraternity up in the West End. People have expressed interest in backing us. What we're trying to do first of all is create a bit of a track record. So we're looking at smaller deals at the moment, which we can finance amongst the partnership and with some close contacts. If we see good bigger deals, we won't stop. But at the moment, we're happy just to grow organically. Produce a couple of good but profitable developments, and with that track record, look to secure some more consistent line of finance. It's going to be easier to do with with a few deals under our belt. But this is part of the reason why we teamed up with Windsor Patterson Architects, because we've got we've got everything there from sort of planning, design, development, purchase, project management capacity. So we're offering something else.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I mean, obviously the opportunity is just conversion of what was popular retail into residential. Is there any other sort of areas that you're looking at from an opportunity point of view? I mean, it's not all residential, obviously. I've been thinking about it from the point of view of, you've got ghost kitchens now starting to become a thing, and the last mile, or the final mile as they call it, in terms of warehouses and micro warehousing and stuff. Have you seen any trends or sort of things that are kind of starting to change that might present an opportunity for this kind of conversion?
Yeah, I mean, there are new occupiers coming in, as you say. I mean, we've got to be careful that we don't spread ourselves too thin and chase every new initiative. But also we've got to be mindful that we've got to move with the times. It's it's just one of those things. You've got to think on your feet, really. What I am interested in is the apart hotel sector.
Right.
I think there's going to be, and there are more coming into our town centres now, and I think that's only going to grow. So, co-living in apart hotels, I think they're good for our town centres going forwards, and I think they'll make good use of vacant buildings and vacant department stores. So we're sort of establishing and expanding our contacts in those markets as well. But not trying to bite off too much at the moment.
The co-working is an interesting area, right? Or co-living, I should say. I've been following the all the kind of stuff going on with the Collective. Yes. And Reza Merchant, he seems to have been kind of quite early into the game, and he's done very well out of it.
Yeah. I mean, he was well, I think probably the first, wasn't he? In his sites that you've got. Not that I've been to one. I haven't had that chance yet, but I could imagine when you're sort of first starting out in London as a 20-something, it's probably a highly desirable place to live rather than a sort of a grotty flat in above a high street.
That's the thing. I think that's exactly what he captured, that immediate need for himself, I guess, because he was of that kind of age group, and he also had, I don't know. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Reza Merchant, but I just wanted to. I mean, it's interesting that you brought that up, though, because here in Ireland, co-living, a lot of people looking at co-living, but there's actually been quite a bit of pushback from communities and stuff, and they don't want to see it going into that area. Do you find the same happening in the UK, or is it generally more welcome?
Co-living to some people is just a posh fig leaf for an HMO, isn't it?
That's the thing. Yeah, that's kind of the terminology I've heard a few times. Yeah.
So I mean, HMO is a dirty word in certain circles, but co-living, when it's done well, it's not cheap. If you want all the bells and whistles and all the service that goes with it, then you're going to be paying a proper rent, and with that, it should attract the right people in
professional kind of class rather than students.
We'll be in there.
Yeah, exactly. Taking a high level view of the market, I mean, do you have any other, ideas regarding, just the direction that the market's going? I mean, obviously logistics seems to be doing incredibly well. Is there anything that you're seeing, just as wearing your kind of agency hat? What are the clients out there looking at the moment that's exciting?
Yeah, I mean, this is really difficult for the pension funds at the moment. The three major sectors which they've been concentrating on over the years is industrial, retail, and offices, of course. And they've been turning their, I'm talking a broad generalisation in a way, but you'll get my point. They've been turning their back on retail for a good handful of years, with exceptions. And industrial, there's more interest in it, from occupiers, and that is bringing in the investors along with it as well. But so as well as retail falling by the wayside again, as a generalisation, offices are in a
Have
bit
been
of a hole at
impacted.
the moment, aren't they, as well? Yeah. So
Yeah, you don't need to tell me about that. I'm sitting in a business park here, about 1.5 million square feet of office, and pretty much, I'd say 95% of it's vacant at the moment. Well, not vacant, but just simply unoccupied.
right, yeah,
And it's a struggle, all right, to sort of. I can imagine the pension funds, because if they have these balance, they try to balance at a certain proportion,
yeah,
and values are falling off on two of them, then they're going to find themselves massively overweight in one, and
yeah,
they have mandates and stuff like that to prevent that from happening, don't they? So it forces them to kind of to
yeah.
do different things. I just thought, it's funny, we were communicating on social media a little while back, and I thought, just changing tack,
Right.
the fact that you're out on your bike, and you were enjoying kind of going across country on your bike one of the days,
Yeah.
and I kind of thought, oh well, that's a side to you that I don't know. Do you like the whole biking sort of side to things? I guess it's.
Yeah. I wouldn't. I'm a sort of a midlife enthusiast, if that makes
I
sense.
get you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a process I've gone through. I've had the sports car and the camper van, so so it's the motorbike next, and I've run out of ideas after that. But yeah, no, I enjoy it. You got to get away. We work hard, and it's if you don't have alternative things to do, it can be all consuming, can't it? So
Well, that's one of the things I was going to say is, I mean, rejuvenation. After my couple of days away last week, I've come back to the office feeling like really rejuvenated and fresh. And it's something that I kind of realized that, a lot of people, they go out there and they work, 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 and you don't realize how kind of that can numb you and your creativity or your ability to kind of deal with issues and stuff like that actually becomes less and less effective the harder you work. And so it's these having kind of like these pastimes or these hobbies and stuff like that can actually be a great way to stay sharp and
mm.
stuff like that. And you mentioned also NLP. Is that something that you've got an interest in?
Yeah, well, yeah. I didn't sort of set out looking to be certified practitioner of NLP, but I did take a coaching qualification last year. Like I said, took it. I'm sort of three-quarters of the way through it. So I sort of look back at the early stages of my career and wondered if I might have benefited from a sort of a firm hand on the tiller. I think in the surveying fraternity, it's been pretty poor.
Right.
Giving the youth a guiding hand. I don't know what it's like nowadays because I haven't worked at one of the very big companies for a while. I suspect it's better, but I did set myself thinking that with some proper coaching and mentoring, whether I might have been a bit further advanced than I got. I've had a great time and such like. But anyway, so thinking about that, I wondered whether I could possibly help. So I took some coaching qualifications last year to actually be able to do it professionally rather than just as a sideline. So I've had good fun doing that. I've been mentoring some younger property professionals, helping them along the way, and then the further you get into that, then you sort of work out that NLP, neuro linguistic programming, put my false teeth in, is a useful sort of adjunct to it. It's all about getting the best out of yourself. Talking.
It's very effective. I mean, that is one of the strands, I suppose, of mindset, and this whole podcast that I do is very much focused on mindset. And last week's podcast was all about confidence, and I think a lot of people out there are interested in becoming property investors, but the one thing that they kind of lack at the outset is confidence. And I do think that neuro linguistic programming would actually be a very useful aspect to kind of add to that, because when people are starting out, they really kind of, their mind is working against them, because you lack that confidence of doing your first deal, and you're kind of, you don't know, am I doing something right? Am I doing something wrong? And like you say, having a coach or a mentor and stuff like that is kind of a valuable asset to have. I know, looking back at my own career, I got very lucky in a couple of occasions, and I made a lot of money on a couple of deals, and it immediately went to my head, and I suddenly thought, oh, I've, you know, figured out the magic formula for making money, and I can do this everywhere. And I was humbled pretty quickly by the market. And I thought to myself, you know, if I had had a mentor or a coach or somebody that was, you know, much more experienced in my corner, and was somebody that could sort of say, hold on a second, have a look at what you're doing here. This is definitely, you know, you're getting out over your skis. It's time to kind of take a step back.
Yeah.
And that would have saved me a lot of money. And I kind of think to myself, what you've just said, similarly, agency, you know, young guys starting out and stuff like that, that there's probably not enough people that have that bit of experience to kind of like teach you
well,
the ways.
It's considered in, you know, it'll be considered a luxury in these big practices. You know, if you're not making money, then you're not particularly useful. You know, some of these big surveying fraternities took on the HR departments with you know, they didn't want those, but you know, they've had to move with the times. And I think a good coach and mentor will pay for himself or herself.
Yeah,
you know, they'll get the best out of their staff retention, you know, improving the company culture. You know, number of reasons why a coach and mentor is good for a business over and above what they cost.
yeah, absolutely. I think, and if you look at some of the bigger firms like Google and stuff, they bring in these guys all the time, and they pay for them to speak and to kind of like fire up the staff and all that kind of stuff. And I know that the people like Simon Sinek and stuff like that, they're paid like $10,000 to come in and speak to your, you know, and a lot of the people that work there would find it incredibly valuable to have somebody like that coming in at your lunch hour and kind of giving you a talk or whatever. So yeah, it's money well spent. We were talking about one of the things that I like to talk about is discipline and you know, personal discipline and stuff. And so I'm big into Ironman training and things like that. And you hinted at the fact that you've done the Marathon des Sables. Tell us about that. There'll be a lot of people now that don't even know what that is. So why don't you just give us a little rundown on that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, that was another sort of delve into my midlife crisis. I did that at 40. So that was after the camper van, but before the motorbike. But you know, I got into exercise. I don't know when you did, Gavin, but you know, between leaving university and my mid-30s, you know, if I went to the gym a half a dozen times, it would probably. You know, I played golf, and that was my exercise. And then I got into my 30s, and I thought, you know, this is these trousers aren't comfortable.
Yeah, I can relate. Yeah.
So, and I needed to, you know, I need an outlet for my energy, and it's, you know, it wasn't the bars and the nightclubs anymore. It had to be running and the gym. So I got into, you know, various you know, sort of running races, and you know, across the UK I did a few races, never particularly well, but I thoroughly enjoyed them. And then you know, I found myself from going from a 10K to a half marathon to a marathon, and then I'd done an ultra marathon, and all of a sudden somebody asked me to sign up to the Marathon des Sables, and I just couldn't say no, really.
That's 5. Isn't that 5 days of a marathon a day, and there's double marathon towards the end or something?
Yeah, it's 6 in 7 days. So
6 marathons in 7 days.
Yeah,
and it's not on roads.
No,
it's across the desert in the Sahara.
It's in the southern Sahara. You know, parts of it are really like you'd see in Lawrence of Arabia, with the sort of big tumbling dunes and the sort of sun beating down and camels walking across. You know, that's probably about 20% of it. There's some rocky terrain, but it's great fun. Well, going up those dunes isn't so much fun, but coming down the other side is a bit of a giggle. But I did all right, actually. You know, I competed, and I improved each day, and it took a few years for my feet to get better. But
I would have thought.
I can't. You know, nobody can take that achievement away from me now. So
tell us. I mean, how do you train for something like that? I mean, I have a friend who did it about 10 or 15 years ago, and he's a very, very analytical kind of guy, and he went off and he researched all this kind of stuff, and he made all these kind of like decisions about his health and things like that, and it took him, I suppose, a good year of planning to kind of go out and do it. And he said that he he arrived in the Sahara, feeling like he was absolutely ready for this. And there was all these, these kind of French Legionnaire kind of guys, with the white hat and all this, and they were all there. And then some guy turned up in a pink bunny outfit and wanted to run the entire thing in the bunny outfit for charity or something like that.
Yeah.
And he was just like, "Are you kidding?" And all these like Legionnaire kind of guys were like, offended, like that somebody would turn up and this like great history of this event. And the guy's in a pink bunny outfit, but by the end of it, the guy made it to, I think, the 5th day in the bunny outfit, and actually passed out and didn't make it to the finish. But they actually were amazed that he had made it as far as he had, and they all thought like huge respect for the guy and stuff. But my friend had, like, he said it was a spiritual experience, like it was so challenging mentally. And I think he mentioned that he came across a Moroccan, like, I think it was a military, recruit or something like that. And he was trying to prove himself to his unit by doing this. And he remembers coming upon him, and his runners were completely red from bleeding, and that his feet were like basically like minced meat. And he actually, he burst into tears looking at the pain that this poor guy was going through. And he said, like, he's not an emotional person, and they said it had such a deep effect on him doing this. I mean, did you have any of that kind of experience, or how tough was it mentally to do 6 days?
So yes, it's 250k, 150 miles. And they talk about the blisters. I got my first blister on the sole of my foot after 10k, and I thought,
wow, you're going to struggle with the 150 to go.
Yeah, but you're not on your feet for too long per day, and I think that's what got me through it. So it's just under a marathon a day. That could take 5 or 6 hours, and I just got into the mindset that the rest of my time of that day would have been sitting on my backside. But God, I mean, it is hot. It is super hot, and there are times there where you're thinking, what am I doing? What have I entered into? But the camaraderie is fantastic. The evenings are great. And there are things which just drag you through it to the end. And really, if you're halfway through the course in a day, you can't stop. So you've got to finish. And some, I went there to do as good a time as I could. And it was hard work. It was really quite painful. But a lot of people, I was 40 when I went, and I was probably just under average age. And a lot of people go, just to accomplish something and walk the course and just enjoy themselves. It'll be a different event if you went there and walked it. It'd be actually quite good fun, I think.
Very pleasant. Yeah. Well, I mean, it is kind of a bucket list item in a sense, isn't it? It's I mean, I'm training for the Ironman, and I was supposed to do it last year. It got cancelled. Then this year was the year that it was the event got cancelled again. And so now it's supposed to be next year. And I'm thinking to myself, when will this like, I've done a couple of half distance triathlon or Ironman races, but I've never done the full distance. And it's a little bit like that. It's like, to accomplish it, it's on my list there. Like, I want to do that. But
yes,
to do 250 kilometers in 6 days seems like an insane kind of level of fitness.
Well, I did tell myself numerous occasions when I was doing it, never, ever, 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 ever again. And that's still very vivid in my mind. But if you put yourself out there, you've got to finish. Otherwise, what's the alternative? So I'd rather put myself at the start line and then find a way to conclude it, rather than never toe the line and wonder what if.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think I think these things are great ways to just, from a mental standpoint, I think it's very important to set yourself these kind of stretch goals. And a stretch goal is something that it should make you step back and think, whoa, that's maybe too much. Maybe that's beyond what I'm capable of. If you don't have that immediate reaction, then it's not really a stretch goal at all. And I can remember on a few occasions doing something like that. And I did the New York Marathon back in 2002. And it was the first time I ever did a marathon. And I can remember thinking to myself, never again. And then the following year, there I was lined up to start again and do it and try to beat my time. So it's funny how the mind kind of plays games.
Yeah. Well, I think just on an NLP route, I think every time you say to yourself, "I'm not going to do it," or "I can't do it," you're talking to your subconscious, aren't you? You're convincing yourself that you're not good enough, and conversely, every time you pick up the courage or the stupidity to toe the line and get through the race by hook or by crook, you've reinforced the fact that you are quite useful,
capable, and determined and all that. Yeah, no, that's great. Andrew, we're coming to the end of our time. I just one of the questions that I ask my guest every week is for some advice, but not to the general. What advice would you give yourself now, looking back on your career and knowing what you know? Is there some advice that you would give your younger self that you wish you had received at the time?
So that's a good question, isn't it? I suppose. I mean, I should have bought my first house earlier, but that's boring, isn't it?
Well, it's a lot of people who listen to this be thinking, yeah, I've heard that a lot. So go out and buy your first house, guys.
Buy your first house, yeah. You never regret it, or you shouldn't regret it. I think get your network as large as you possibly can whilst you're young and you've got the energy. Just throw yourself out there. Meet everybody, meet anybody. Talk to anybody. You never know when these people are going to be useful again. And I was lucky enough that I did establish a good network. It could have been larger, but the older you get, the less energy you have for these kind of things. So really get your network established, but also think outside the box. When I was starting out in surveying, it was agency. I couldn't see anything else. I wasn't well read enough, or I perhaps hadn't thought about other sort of sectors of the market. So I stuck at agency for a long time, even when we had the credit crunch of 2007, 2008. If I'd have known more about what was available or what other options were around at that time, then I would have probably taken the leap at that time. But I was very sort of single-minded and probably lacking knowledge, I guess, of what else was available to me. So just keep your eyes open, establish the network, work out what other options you've got available. Don't stand still for too long. And just put yourself out there. Really, if you're not going to put yourself out there, it's difficult. You've got to pick up the courage and really sort of grow a thick skin and put yourself out there. And I did that quite a lot when I was younger. I probably could have done it a bit more, I suppose. But good question that is, actually. Yeah.
Thanks.
One to ponder on. Yeah.
One to ponder. Well, and it's been great speaking with you. If people wanted to reach out and learn more about you, what's the best way to connect with you?
Okay. So Tandem Real Estate is my commercial agency. So that's tandemrealestate.co.uk. My contact details are on there. Credo Living is the commercial conversion platform, credoliving.co.uk. I can be contacted through there.
I'll put links in the show notes for people if they want to find those.
But hopefully in the West End, when the bars are open and we're allowed out to play again, I'll be circling around Mayfair and Soho, so you can spot me on there and just grab me for a pint or a coffee.
We'll do that. I look forward to when I'm actually able to get back to the UK. It's been quite a while. I was there in March of 2020, doing a speaking gig with Brendan Quinn, and that was the last time I was in the UK. And prior to that, it was every month that I would be over. So it's it's been a long break. Look forward to catching up with you next time I'm in town.
Yeah, no, that'd be nice. Thanks for having me on, Gavin.
Good to see you, Andrew. Thank you. Okay, so that's it for episode number 63 of Behind the Facade. Thank you so much for listening. As always, my number one ask is to leave a review or to share the episode with someone you think would benefit from it. In today's show notes, you'll find links to Andrew's Credo Living platform and to his Tandem Real Estate website. along with anything else that I can think of. Oh yes, the Marathon des Sables will be going in there as well, because this year is the 35th anniversary, and you can just see some of the sites that Andrew took on back when he did it. If you have any questions or topics you would like me to discuss in future episodes, please feel free to contact me via the Facebook group Behind the Facade Community. Alternatively, you will always find me on social media using the Gavin J. Gallagher handle, and that includes my YouTube channel, which is the area of focus for me these days. Lastly, as always, stay up to date on various events and challenges I am working on by adding your name to my email list already discussed today, but can be found at gavinjgallagher.com/go. All right, folks, hope to see you again next week.